this episode of Let's Talk Gentlemen Six Sports. Today, my special guest is Ryan, and we will be talking some Bills football. Um, how did you think the season went for the Bills?
Well, so last year's season, I mean, we were only a step away from the Super Bowl, as I'm sure that you remember. Um, did I think we were going to beat Kansas City? No. Did I hope we were going to beat Kansas City? Yes. Did I think we were going to get beat the way that we did by Kansas City? No, not really. But I think we still had a couple steps left to take, and I'm sure we probably have a step or two left to take going into this season. But every week in the NFL is a chance to win. So it was pretty disappointing to see. Disheartening. It wasn't disappointing. It was disheartening to see. As somebody who's you and I, we didn't live through the early '90s Super Bowl, um, era, and so we didn't get to see that. So for the first time, we really got to see the height of Bills Mafia and what it's like to be the AFC Championship and just a step away um, from the Super Bowls. So yeah, it was pretty disheartening, but at the same time, you know what? That close Colts win and then beating Baltimore, which nobody expected us to do, and just and showing everybody up that doubted us, um, felt pretty good as a young, new age Bills fan.
Yeah, I didn't think the Bills would beat Kansas City either, but I was hoping they would because
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I thought the defense was a little bit better last season.
The problem with Kansas City is that they fire on all cylinders. So on offense, you have Mahomes' arm. They have the receiving threats that are fast, like Tyreek Hill. They have the receiving threats like Kelsey that are going to make the catch and, move the chains. They have the running backs like Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. Damian Williams is no longer with them. I think he signed with Chicago, but at the time he was there. And then of course Patrick Mahomes, a lot like Josh Allen, can run, can move on his feet. So they're offensively like if you can't work all different aspects of the game, you're not really going to be able to pin them down. And so I think that's kind of why we went out and drafted somebody like Greg Rousseau, who can transition over to edge fairly easily um, in this upcoming season and go and put pressure on Patrick Mahomes and hopefully force him to make some of those mistakes. But then their defense is really good as well. The thing is, for their special teams, their special teams is good, but they're not consistent. And so I thought maybe there was a chance we could beat them on special teams like we did going back to that Colts game. But even if we won and got to the Super Bowl, it's almost the same thing with Tampa Bay. So I'm sure we wouldn't have won the Super Bowl, but just to be able to get to another one and to get there to that point would have been pretty awesome. But Kansas City are the team to beat in the AFC, right? I mean, they're going to be the team to beat for the next couple of years. Um, so disappointing on our account. Like I said, though, just got those couple extra steps that we needed to take that we hoped wouldn't shine through, um, but ended up shining through.
Do you think that the Bills will be able to beat like Kansas City or Tampa Bay like during the season?
Oh man. Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, we do play them both. Uh, I think we maybe have a chance to beat Tampa Bay. Um, Brady doesn't have the movement that Mahomes does on his feet. So if we can put pressure on him, he's going to be more prone to mistakes and he can't necessarily run away as fast. However, he does have a plethora of weapons. I mean, if Antonio Brown is your third or fourth wide receiver on the depth chart, I mean, you're stacked with talent. It's undeniable that offensively they have really good talent. It's just how can we exploit their offensive line to get and put pressure on Tom Brady? For so long, it's really only been a few guys, primarily Jerry Hughes, that have been putting the pressure on opposing quarterbacks, but he can't do it all on his own. So adding somebody like Greg Rousseau, adding somebody like Boogie Basham, who can help out on that defensive line, help put pressure on the quarterback is going to be critical. And I'm pretty confident that we could match or beat Tampa Bay's defense. When it comes to the Chiefs, I'm not really that sure. I think we definitely took steps, and but I also think that the Chiefs took steps, but they may have maintained. I think going forward in the next couple of years, it's going to be easier to beat the Chiefs because they have spent so much money on such young guys that they're going to have to lose talent and not be able to pay to replace that talent. Whereas Tampa Bay, a lot of their active talent is a little bit on the older end. They can trade those guys away. They can let them retire. They can let their contracts expire. And they have younger guys that are now waiting in the wings. I mean, this whole draft for Tampa Bay was to set up that next generation. Kyle Trask at quarterback, adding some more offensive weapons to the ones that you already have there, just to prepare for the eventuality that Tom Brady will retire someday. So I think long term, you may have to worry about Tampa Bay even more so than the Chiefs, but that doesn't mean that they're going to stop being a threat anytime soon. But I'm more confident we could beat Tampa Bay in the season than I am the Chiefs, if I'm being completely honest.
What do you think of Aaron Rodgers retiring from Green Bay?
Well, he didn't retire yet. That was a false tweet that was originally put out, unless that changed, which I don't think it did. But I don't think in the end he will retire. But I'm not sure that he'll necessarily stay in Green Bay. I know that a lot of the information that came out was false. I don't know if you watched the Pat McAfee show at all, but AJ Hawk, who was a linebacker for the Green Bay Buccaneers, the Green Bay Packers, and a close friend of Aaron Rodgers, even through till today, he was the Aaron in the text messages that compared the current Green Bay GM Brian Gutekunst to Jerry Krause, who was the general manager for the Chicago Bulls that ran Michael Jordan out of town. So it wasn't Aaron Rodgers. It was actually AJ Hawk, whose name is Aaron. So I know that a lot of the information that came out about it was false, but I don't necessarily know if Aaron will stay in Green Bay. I know that they've offered him at least, I'm confident of one contract, possibly two contracts with significant money, but I think it's going to be more about promises and following through on them. But to break it down even a little bit more, he's 37 going into 38, or he's 38 going into 39. Either way, he's pretty old for an NFL player. And so I think what could potentially happen here is, well, my thought process is if he's promised, hey, we're going to go and get a bunch of offensive players in the draft and free agency at the end of this season, you have to bank on the fact that Aaron Rodgers is going to be healthy throughout this season, no injuries, no severe illness, nothing like that, and then continues to play not only in Green Bay but in the NFL going into the next season. So you're essentially saying we're promising something that's not even going to happen for another 2 seasons at this point, with what he really wants, which is offensive talent. Up until they drafted, and them being the Green Bay Packers, up until they drafted Jordan Love in 2016, I think the last time that they took an offensive skill player was 2002, and it was a wide receiver. So, I mean, Aaron, and they got Aaron Rodgers got them to the NFC Championship 2 years in a row. You know what I mean? So getting him that talent, primarily a wide receiver and tight end, I think that they're pretty set on running back. But getting him that talent, reinforcing his offensive line a little bit to give them that boost, I think by all means, if Aaron Rodgers stays with a the Super Bowl, potentially win the Super Bowl heading into this upcoming, 2021-2022 season. But like I said, and we were talking about this before the show. I had the series premiere of my new football podcast, the Rust Belt Report, and I was talking with my special guest Nino about it. We both said we don't know and we don't think that he's necessarily going to want to stay in Green Bay. We think he truly does want out, but that the events that have been surrounding it are a little bit over exaggerated.
Do you think the Bills um had a good draft?
Do I think that they had a good draft?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was actually really surprised. Going into the draft, I don't know about you, so maybe you can share this a little bit after. I was not, well, I'll ask you right now. Did you want them to take a running back in the first round?
I thought they would have went like running back on defense in the
Okay. Did you have a preference between Najee Harris and Etienne, or were you just hoping for either running back?
um I I was just hoping for one of the two.
Okay. So I'm in the complete opposite camp as you. Going in, I was like, no, I don't want a running back. I understand that the running game was a problem last year, but I put that more squarely on the offensive line than I did the actual running backs. Because there's no way Devin Singletary did what he did his rookie year, then regressed to the point that he's just not, just like forgot how to play the game he's been playing his whole life. Um, but that said, we have 7 running backs in our running back room right now. I didn't really see, if they didn't believe in any of them, I don't really see the need to add an 8th or to keep 7 of them going into the draft. None of them, if Moss gets injured and Singletary doesn't have a good season, the whole rumor that it's a possible draft day trade, especially in round 1, is not like that. Just doesn't make sense to me. But again, we have 7 currently on the team right now. We signed Matt Breida in free agency. Christian Wade is actually, from our international pathways. This is the first year he can vie to make the roster, so he's actually going to be a participant this year in trying to get a spot. We brought back Taiwan Jones, who's been historically a special teams guy. I was firmly in the camp of I wanted them to get a corner because I see the disparity in talent level between Tre'Davious White and whoever's at that CB2 position. And going into the draft, I was very much in that camp of I want another DB. I want a guy in the corner. There's some guys. Most of their names were not pronounceable, but the guy out of Syracuse, I know was pretty big on a lot of people's radar. Colin Farrell, was that his name? Was it another guy whose name was potentially out there for corner? I could have that completely wrong, so don't quote me if that's his actual name. If it isn't, then great. But if not, then I didn't say it. So that's the camp that I was in. After the draft, though, and looking back at it, I'm pretty happy with the draft. Like I just got done saying, our 2 biggest barriers to winning a Super Bowl right now are the Kansas City Chiefs. They're the biggest barrier to getting to the Super Bowl. And B, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are our current barrier to winning a Super Bowl if we get there. I can only imagine that they're going to be in the Super Bowl or in Super Bowl talks and contention for the next 2 to 3 years. So I think drafting Rousseau was fantastic. However, a risk. Yes, the 15 and a half sacks in 2019, putting him behind Chase Young, who's currently the reigning NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. Sounds good, but that was not only his first year playing as like an edge rusher, but his only year playing college football at all. He even redshirted. He didn't get a scholarship. He didn't get an offer. So he redshirted onto the team. Um, I was surprised that they took so many players in or positions back to back. So obviously in that second round, they took Boogie Basham, who is another defensive lineman. They took 2 offensive linemen. Um, they did take a cornerback, Wild Goose, who has an amazing name and picked number 32. So now it's gone from the Juice is loose to the Goose is loose, which is pretty awesome. But I think in terms of their draft this year, I think it went really well. We also we traded with Houston and turned 1 pick into 2, and we were able to use those to draft 2 guys. Now, are all of these guys going to make the team? Probably not. I mean, this team is so talented already, but they're definitely preparing for when guys like Jerry Hughes, their contract is Mario Addison, their contract is up at the end of this season. Chances are they're either retiring or they're not, or maybe they just don't plan on bringing them back. So they're looking towards the future. Some of these guys that we drafted this year may be on the practice squad. They may go to another team's practice squad and end up back in Buffalo next year. But in terms of overall, for the needs of the draft, I give them somewhere in the A, maybe an A minus, or just an A. But I think that it was a fantastic draft. I think we covered the majority of the needs in terms of protection and putting pressure on the quarterback. Everything else, you can get in. They either got in free agency or they're going to solve now through, walkthroughs, OTAs, training camp, and then the preseason.
What do you think of our coaching staff so far? Like with Sean McDermott and Brian Dable and the defensive coordinator, Leslie Frazier.
Well, I think that they're horrible and they need to be fired. No, I'm just kidding. I think that they're fantastic. I think that they're hands down one of the best, hardworking, dedicated, and focused coaching staffs. Not only in the NFL, but probably in all of football. I put the Buffalo Bills up there with the likes of Alabama, LSU, the Patriots during the Super Bowl years, an earlier version of Mike Tomlin's Pittsburgh Steelers, just teams that have continual success. The early Chuck Pagano Colts with Peyton Manning era, like teams that you look at them and they have success. I think that they're fantastic. My only thing is Dable. I have 2 gripes, one on offense, one on defense. I'll start off with that. On offense with Dable, I think that they get too predictable. In the beginning of the season, there was a lot of flash of like creativity and new things that we were trying out, but like they only happen once a season and then you don't see them again. That's like in the Houston playoff game in 2018 when Josh gets thrown the ball from, I forgot who threw it, but like Josh gets thrown the ball for the touchdown. Like when you see stuff like that, you're like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like we're going to win. But then for the rest of the game, nothing happened because nothing creative or out of the box happened. It was very predictable. And so I think Dable has a tendency to get very creative in the beginning of the game, thinking that it's going to throw off other teams, but then gets very predictable for the rest of the game. So I'd like to see him stay unpredictable because I think especially with the fact that, again, you have Tampa Bay, which is a very experienced, very veteran team. You have Kansas City, which has a mix of veterans, young bloods, and guys that have been in the league a few years and who are going to be at the utmost level of competition, competitiveness. And then you have a team like the Colts, who are on par with Buffalo and are remaining on par with Buffalo. And even potentially Cleveland, who I don't know if Cleveland necessarily got better this offseason, but they were pretty good last year. So just you have all these teams that are coming up, and you want to keep being able to stay competitive and beat them. So yeah, man, we'll see.
Do you
Oh, there was the defense. Hold on, sorry, that's my fault. There is then the defensive side of the ball. I think that we get like a 2 or 3 score. We get like a 2 score lead, and then Frazier goes out into like this like ultra zone cover two. That's not the right word for it. He goes into this like ultra zone like Hail Mary style defense that just leaves way too many gaps open. When you get up by like 2 leads, and it's like in the end of the third quarter. It's the equivalent of pulling a goalie down by one with like 5 minutes left in the third. You know what I mean? So just because I know that you were watching the Stanley Cup playoffs right before this, I wanted to throw the little hockey thing in there for you. But it's just like it's the like I said, it's the equivalent of pulling a goalie with 5 minutes left in the third, and you're down by one. It's not cute, and it's not throwing anybody off, and it's not funny because we've almost lost or have lost games by doing that. I mean, you can almost blame the Cardinals game on having it get that close by doing that in the third quarter and letting them open it up, or by having us open it up and let them catch up, and then have that last second Hail Mary just completely obliterate the game. I mean, the Bills could have been, instead of 13-3, they could have been 14-2 at the end of the season. Still would have
yeah
lost to Kansas City, but
yeah, and then like they had one game where it came down to a Hail Mary again, but then um Jordan Poyer knocked it down and
yeah.
um whatever it was, and the Bills ended up winning that game.
Yeah, I think it was the Colts game. I think it was that playoff game. Him and Hyde and Trey were all back there, and they ended up knocking it down in order. I think that was the Colts game in order for us to get our first playoff win, um, since what was it, 95? So
And like, what was your favorite memory of the the playoffs for this past season?
well, I can tell you one of my least favorite memories is that I'm also kind of I'm again born and bred in Buffalo. I did live in PA for 4 years for college. But I'm kind of a Colts fan. I'm really a big Pat McAfee fan, but I like what the Colts are doing. I like the culture that they've built. Obviously, Frank Reich having that Buffalo connection as their coach. Um, so I'm kind of a Colts fan. Uh, my least favorite memory was like, okay, obviously I wanted Buffalo to win, but like I was also, again, as somebody who supports the Colts and stays up to date. Excuse me. Stays up to date with them as a team. Um, it was a difficult game to watch. But in terms of the playoffs, my favorite memory of the playoffs is not actually a Buffalo memory. It's actually the Cleveland Pittsburgh game. And just because, like I said, I lived in Pittsburgh. My friends are Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And just watching that first play and watching that ball that gets snapped fly over Ben Roethlisberger's head, and the Browns scoop it up and return it for a touchdown in the opening seconds of that game, um, was probably my favorite just overall playoff memory, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, mine was that Tyree Jackson guy, or um Jackson, the guy for the Bills, who wore number 24. Um,
Dane Jackson?
yeah,
Oh, 24 is Taron Johnson.
yeah, Taron Johnson, that guy. When he ran the ball back from um that pass and it got intercepted and taking it to the end zone.
Was that the playoffs?
Yeah, that was against Baltimore.
See, okay, so that's what I was thinking originally, but I always, for some reason, I think it was during the Pittsburgh game because didn't he almost do the same thing during the regular season against Pittsburgh? He had an interception and almost ran it back or something like, or maybe somebody else did. But I always think that it was Taron Johnson doing that against Pittsburgh. So that would be my favorite playoff. Let's say I have two. Let's say that it's the Pittsburgh Cleveland game and then the Bills Baltimore.
Yeah, because like I at the point where um Jackson was gonna throw it to a receiver in their end zone, I thought the Bills were gonna lose that game.
Oh yeah. Now there was definitely close a couple times. I mean, the Baltimore game ended up being the one that we won the most by. Um, so it just you don't want it to be that close because you don't think it bodes well the higher you go up.
And then the field goal kicker for them um kicked one and it hit and it went off the upright.
Oh yeah, that's Justin Tucker, which is crazy because Justin Tucker is undoubtedly one of the best kickers of all time in the NFL. I'm a little bit of a fangirl, I guess you could say, for special teams. I really like special teams. Excuse me. I don't know why I'm yawning all of a sudden. I like special teams. I think it's an important part of the game, and so I always try and include it into my conversations. Like I said, I'm a huge Pat McAfee fan. Uh, yeah, Justin Tucker missing those kicks because he missed like two of them during the game, which is crazy. Justin Tucker doesn't do that, and for everybody that's listening that watches football and knows football, you know that what I'm saying is true. He very rarely um, misses, and for him to miss two in a playoff game that deep into the playoffs, not round one, is a crazy thing to have happen.
Yeah, I thought like I think it was like two or three that he missed or something. I don't remember, but he, I think he missed like
Yeah,
two or three of them.
yeah, I think it was two because you had brought up the one, and then that reminded me that there was two because I remember tweeting about he may have missed through three. I could be completely misremembering. But for him to miss any is especially in the playoffs is a weird phenomenon that again as somebody that likes special teams you don't want to see somebody like Justin Tucker miss those kicks, but it felt pretty good as a Bills fan to see him miss those two kicks because it would have been a lot closer. And like you said, we could have been eliminated there at that point against Baltimore, which obviously did not happen, and we probably wouldn't have wanted to have happened.
Um, what do you think of Tyler Bass and Matt Hunt, the punter?
Yeah, so we did just get a new punter, didn't we? Matt Hack, the guy who was on Philadelphia, not Philadelphia, Miami.
Yeah,
Uh, so I like Hack. I didn't like him when he was on Miami because he was a good punter and we faced them two times a year. He's not Corey Bojorquez, which I was surprised that they got rid of him. I didn't think that he was going to be a cap casualty, and he ended up being one. But I think we found a worthy replacement. Man, in terms of Tyler Bass, I mean, that kid has a golden leg. Knock on wood. I don't want to curse anything, but that man has a golden leg. He was shaky coming into the season, but that was to be expected for a guy who's a rookie coming into a season where you have no training camp, you have no OTAs, you have no preseason, and to kick at an NFL level. I mean, you don't you typically don't want to start a quarterback coming into a season. You don't want to start any rookie coming into a season. You typically, the ideal situation would be to put them behind somebody to learn, right? Going back to the Aaron Rodgers conversation, they put Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre for a couple of years. You now have Jordan Love sitting behind uh, Aaron Rodgers as well. You had Mahomes for a short time behind Alex Smith before he ended up taking over. Josh Allen was behind Tyrod Taylor at one point, And so I think that he's going to be our kicker for a long time to come. Obviously he has that 4-year rookie contract, which is great. He's only going into his second season, but he's going to demand some big money. Granted, it's kicker money, which is not a whole heck of a lot, but I don't want to see them lose him because, contrary to popular belief, kicking and punting is not easy. We can all kick and punt footballs, but they're probably not going to go where we want them to go. And there are very few guys like Matt Hack and like Corey Bojorquez, who's the kicker or the punter for the Raiders, who is currently a free agent. If I remember his name, I'll shout it out. But there are very few guys in the league at any given time that can pin a ball at the 1-yard line. You know what I mean? There's very few guys that are kickers that can make those kicks consistently and make crazy kicks. Again, Justin Tucker, Jake Elliott, our guys, the Adam Vinatieri, that are just insane talents at kicking. And you know what? Add Tyler Bass to that list. I mean, the guy has a golden leg, so I'm 100% happy with that pick. And the fact, I think it speaks volumes that they used a draft pick on him. You know what I mean? Because a lot of kickers and punters go free agent after a draft. A lot of people don't even waste, quote unquote, waste a draft pick on kickers and punters. But to show that Brandon Beane used draft capital to draft a kicker to add to special teams just showed not only how important special teams is, but how important he felt at that time that Tyler Bass would be and is now a part of his team, like how important he is. So I'm happy with him.
Was that punter Marquette King or something?
Thank you. Yes, Marquette King, an amazing talent. Jacob Schum, who was a former punter for Miami, a Buffalo native, even consistently is in Buffalo working out, not for the Bills, but just on his own. Played at the NFL level for a long time. For some reason, not being signed by any teams, but just these amazing. I mean, Pat McAfee, who we've talked about a few times, just amazing talents at what they can do, and we've all seen that there are guys out there that cannot do that job that have starting jobs as kickers and punters. But you have guys like Schum and Marquette King. Adam Vinatieri is currently a free agent. I mean, literally the GOAT of kicking in the NFL is a free agent. Has been for over a year now. Pat McAfee almost made a return to the NFL a couple of times. So it is not an easy job. And we saw in the Colts game, it came down to special teams. I said it would come down to special teams. It came down to special teams because the teams on offense and defense are so similar at that time that it was just, it was going to come down to that. It's an important phase of the game that people need to stop disrespecting.
Do you have any questions?
No, man. I mean, we pretty much covered everything that we said we were going to talk about and a little bit more. So I'm pretty happy with the conversation. I asked my question about, where you fell in the draft and stuff like that. So do you have anything else for me? Is really the question that it comes down to.
Where can people, like my viewers, find your podcast?
Well, I'm happy that you brought that up, and thank you for bringing that up. So, for those of you that don't know, Robbie and I actually got connected through Ranting Ron, who's a mutual friend of ours. Um, and so I have my own podcast, and that's how we got connected. You can find me, or you can find my podcast Twitter at the again, it's at the LDG Sports. And we have a bunch of different podcasts. Granted, we're just starting out, but you can find episodes of The Rivalry, which is our hockey podcast. You can find right now, just the series premiere of the Rust Belt Report, which is my solo NFL podcast. I have a different guest on each week. So, at some point, I'm going to have you on as my co-host, because I have a different co-host each week. We're about ready to start recording episodes of Unmitigated Chaos, which is going to be our main football show. There's going to be 3, 4, 5 of us that are going to be on there. One of my friends, interestingly enough, who's going to be on there, played high school football with Tyler Boyd, the Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver. And so, he knows, he's not necessarily friends still with Tyler Boyd, but he knows him. And so, hopefully maybe at some point we can get somebody like Tyler Boyd on one of these podcasts. But we're going to be covering baseball, basketball, esports, sports betting, just a bunch of different things. Racing is going to be on there as well. And we're even going to have a temporary podcast for the Olympics every time that the Olympics comes up. So that's something that we've been talking about. We're talking about TikTok series and stuff like that. But if you go to at the LDG Sports on Twitter, and even if you can find LDG Sports on our on Instagram, there's a link which is anchor.fm/LDGS. That'll take you to our Anchor page, or you can search for us on places like Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, or pretty much anywhere that you would find podcasts except for Apple for the time being.
And you can find my shows on YouTube. Let's Talk 716 Sports, and on Twitter at Robbie39Bowler is where you can follow me and catch some of my podcasts. Thank you for watching this episode of Let's Talk 716 Sports. Thank you to my guest Ryan, and have a great day or night.